Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Sunday service up here on the internet. So, hopefully, everyone's doing amazing. I hope everyone has had a really lovely weekend. And today, the theme I wanted to talk about today is frenemies and female friendship and all of that type of stuff. So, I had a conversation with a friend recently, and she was basically talking about a frenemy situation. I would describe it that way. And it got me thinking about sometimes in the past where I've been in a similar situation. So I just kind of want to talk about it. And if you're viewing live, feel free to say hello in the chat and let me know where you're viewing from and how you relate to this topic. Sunday service is supposed to be a little bit interactive. And so if you do have anything to contribute, if you've got any thoughts as you're watching, please say hi, please post in the comments. If you're watching the replay, I would love to hear what you have to say about this topic. Before we get rolling, I also wanted to say I am starting a feminine energy boot camp next week, I guess this coming week, starting on August 8th for the Lionsgate portal. I think it's going to be really fun. And if you are someone who struggles with feminine energy, if your life is not quite the way you want it to be, if your self-esteem and self-confidence is a little bit down in the dumps, this is absolutely for you. I just see so many women who are not living their potential, who are, I don't want to say half-baked, but just living life at kind of half-mast a little bit. And I'm always like, let me show you the ways. So this is kind of me doing that. So if you are interested in the Feminine Energy Bootcamp, please reach out and let me know. That is starting next week, either solo or group. So let me know what you're interested in with that. And yeah, I think it's going to be really, really fun. And I'm excited. Another fun thing just to kind of get us started is I am offering a special deal for anyone who has never had a tarot reading with me before. And so if you are a brand new tarot client, please reach out and I will give you 33% off of a tarot reading with me. I think that is a fun way to kind of get your feet wet, and maybe you've never had a tarot reading before, maybe you've never had a reading with me before. Let me know and I'll hook you up. Okay, so let's get to the topic. Frenemies and why we should get rid of frenemies. So there is this interesting thing with female friendships that I've noticed that I think is really distinct from what we see in male friendships. With a lot of male friendships, they don't tend to mind competition. They don't tend to mind disagreement. They don't really tend to mind if one person really is succeeding, excelling, rising, elevating. Because a lot of male friendships, it seems like, are based in difference and competition and being okay with that as a fun thing. And I feel like a lot of female friendships are based rather on sameness and group mimicry and group cohesion and everyone kind of being the same and no one really outshining. And so what I've noticed is that in a lot of female friend groups, if one person starts to differentiate, if one person starts to achieve more, do more, be more, all of that, then they tend to get kind of ganged up on, and the whole situation ends up really fucked up. Someone will get bullied, if someone will get excluded, all of that type of stuff. And it's something I've definitely experienced before, in friend groups and then also one-on-one. And so I think a lot of the time, folks don't realize that friendships are actually supposed to be really supportive, loving, encouraging. If someone wants you to lose or is happier when you have a failure and is more present for you when you have a failure rather than when you have a success, that's not a very good sign. And I would really reconsider whether or not you want to have someone like that in your sphere. I do actually think it is a little bit better to be flying solo and do the lone wolf vibe for a little bit rather than have people in your sphere, friends, let's say, who wish bad things for you or who are resentful or who just have bad things to say about you and bad energy in your direction. You know what I mean? All of that is so optional. And I see a lot of folks, with women especially, with historical friends who don't support them, who they spend a lot of time complaining about, and all of this type of thing. And so if you are someone who has a friend that really pisses you off, or you just notice yourself kind of fuming whenever you guys are hanging out or anything like that. Like I would really challenge you to think about whether or not that relationship is of service to your highest and best energy and your highest and best growth and all of that. And so one practice to figure that out that really helped me when I was kind of going through this was to journal every morning and or every night, like just like pick one, either first thing in the morning or in the evening before bed, and just journal out like whatever random shit came up. And so after a month or two, I reread all of these journal like diary entries. And what I had realized I was reading them was, oh my God, I was making the same complaint like a million times over. Like there was definitely some patterns coming up. And a lot of it was me complaining about this one friend and how she was unsupportive and how I didn't feel seen and heard by her. And just like, I didn't vibe with some of the stuff that was going on. And so I kind of realized like, okay, there's this pattern with her that I clearly am uncomfortable with and not really resonating with. And so I need to bring it up. And so I did bring it up, and it didn't end up resolving. So we had a friend breakup, and I actually feel so much more peaceful and like happy. Like I don't miss her. It's great. Like I feel really good. And I think a lot of the time when people are afraid to let go of toxic friendships or these friends that wish us badly, like these frenemies, a lot of folks are afraid to get rid of them or to just break up with them or to let them go or to confront them and be like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is how I feel. What can we do about this? Can we resolve this? And I think often it is this feeling of scarcity and perhaps a lack of self-worth that causes a lot of people to keep these people around. Think about it, because if we're operating from an abundance mindset, we know that there's going to be more people out there that are going to be easy to find, that are going to be more resonant with where we're at in our life. And so having frenemies, keeping frenemies, in my opinion, is a sign of a scarcity mindset and a lack of self-worth. Like we can perform high self-esteem, we can perform self-worth as much as we want, but if we are keeping frenemies in our life, it is to me a clear sign that we actually don't have as much self-worth and self-esteem as we might be performing and trying to convince everyone that we have. Because if we actually did have that self-esteem and we actually did operate from that space of abundance and groundedness and trust that the universe has got something, thank you, Awaz, something better in store for us, then it would not be so hard to have that conversation where we are having a chat about, okay, what is going on here and can we shift the dynamic a bit? And I don't think there's anything wrong with having that type of discussion, right? Like, can we shift this dynamic? What is going on? And unfortunately, people who want the worst for us and yet also want to be in our proximity, like these kind of frenemy haters, whatever, oftentimes like they don't do well with this kind of like confrontation or these type of conversations that we might have to see if there is some kind of way to resolve it. And it's just such an interesting phenomenon. And I do really recommend that daily journaling practice. Like, see, what are you complaining about? Who are you complaining about? And it is kind of an insane thing to do to repeat the same thing, right? Like, how much mental space is complaining about so-and-so frenemy? Like, how much space is that taking up from your life that you really could be spending doing other things? Probably a lot. And it was really interesting for me, and this was like a few years ago, to look back at my journal and be like, oh my God, I'm complaining about so-and-so a lot. Clearly, I need to do something about this. Like, I don't like to be a person who complains. It's kind of against my values. And so you have to do something about it if you do want it to change. You can't do the same thing a million times and expect the same results. And oftentimes, I think many of us want something specific from people who are just unwilling or unable to give that to us, whether that's our parents, whether that's a lover, a date, a romantic relationship. But we also see that in friendships as well. Like sometimes we are going to be barking up the wrong tree, wanting someone to love us, wanting someone to accept us. And we're just asking the wrong person for that. And then the question becomes, okay, so there's that aspect that is theirs to, let's say, own. There's an aspect of it that's their responsibility for being a bit of an asshole. And then there's our responsibility too in the whole equation. And then the question becomes, okay, why are we attracted to either friends, lovers, whatever, people who are not able to have satisfying, mutually engaging, mutually supportive, mutually positive relationships with us? Why are we sucked into that vortex of trying to convince someone else that we're worthy of love, that we're worthy of, celebration, that we're worthy of being treated, let's say, really well, lovingly, kindly, all of that. And so if you do notice yourself in situations where like it's kind of like, oh my God, I have a lot of these frenemy situations, that is something to notice. Like, is there a part of you that you need to heal so that you can stop being attracted to people who don't meet your needs and who don't, let's say, have your best interest at heart? And so there's that unhealthiness that we need to heal in ourselves when we are constantly attracted to these people that are not able to help us, that are not able to really be supportive friends or otherwise. So I think it is so common to blame the other person. They're being an asshole. They're not being supportive. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. We can blame other people all the time. Like, it's kind of an easy thing to do. It's a way to feel like a victim. It's a way to feel aggrieved. It's a way to feel wronged. And there can be a bit of a moral, we can feel like really good about ourselves sometimes when that's the case, right? We can feel like, oh, this person did me wrong. They're so bad. I'm so good, blah, blah, blah. And it creates this dichotomy of good and bad. And it also becomes this really easy way to sidestep reflecting on, okay, what is it about my own psychology, my own spirit that attracts me to these kind of dysfunctional connections? And that is something to really think about. And I know for me, when I was in my early 20s, like late teens, early 20s, I can't remember now, I had a friend group, and I'm not friends with any of those people anymore. And as I've gotten older and healed a lot, one of the things that I've done was just kind of reflect, like, why was I attracted to all these weird friends? And the conclusion I came to was I was still in that trauma headspace. And I grew up with a lot of emotional neglect. And so I was not used to being celebrated. I was not used to being praised. I was not used to having my needs met or thought of as important by the people in my life. It was just like not a thing. And this is something I only realized like within the last 5 years. And it was actually mostly through attending the trauma conference every year for the past since 2020. And one of the things that it often talks about on that conference about trauma is neglect and childhood neglect. And until that conference, like 5 years ago, I had not thought about that as a framework. I was aware of the trauma framework, the PTSD framework, but I wasn't aware of neglect. And so as a child, since I was so used to neglect, it was just like wallpaper. It was totally banal, totally normal. I then, as someone in my early 20s, did not notice neglect when it happened in my friendships, because I was not even in a space where I realized that I was being neglected as a child. I didn't really realize it. I just thought that was normal. And so that programming, that psychological programming, basically it persisted in my life from childhood, adolescence, and then my early 20s. And so the friends I made then, the reason I'm not really friends with a lot of those folks now is because the choices I made about my friends was from that space of not realizing what neglect was. And so it actually makes sense that as I've gotten older and kind of unprogrammed the normalization of neglect, that I would reevaluate those relationships and realize, okay, none of these are really healthy friendships. I need to like get rid of these. And so when we normalize bad treatment, or when our childhood normalizes bad treatment and neglect and like toxic dynamics, we start to normalize that in other aspects of our life, whether that's our romantic life, whether that's friendships, whatever it is. It can be all of the above. It can be one or the other. I know sometimes people have, let's say, an easier time with friendships, but a harder time with love, or sometimes vice versa. The romantic relationships are like great, but they always have these weird toxic friendships. And so I really do think that a lot of this, whatever the choices that we make, our attractions energetically or psychologically or otherwise, do come from, okay, what were the norms in childhood? And for me, again, that was neglect. And so I was neglected as well in a lot of my friendships in my early 20s. And noticing that, being able to reflect on that now, is really interesting. And so what I'd really encourage everyone to do, if you do feel like frenemies are a part of your life, a part of your sphere, maybe it's something that you experienced in the past, but you don't really experience anymore, it's I think a really useful thing to reflect on, okay, what are the norms of my childhood? How was I treated there? What was the circumstances? What was the milieu of my childhood psychologically? Was I neglected? Was I celebrated? And if the answer is yes, you were neglected, no, you were not celebrated, it makes sense that until we notice that, we're aware and we heal that we would be attracted to, let's say, friendships, friend groups, etc., that are an echo of that same exact type of behavior. And we'll usually find ourselves in these similar patterns until we notice what's going on, we notice the pattern, and we understand, okay, why am I normalizing this weird behavior? And in order to move past it, we need to understand it, normalize it, or realize what we've normalized, and then make a different choice, because all of that is completely optional. And I feel like a part of moving past the frenemy thing, again, is moving into a genuine space of self-love, self-acceptance, and abundance. There's going to be other people who are going to be able to see your value and treat you really well. And I'm noticing that there's some people live, so feel free to say hello in the chat if you wish to. Again, no pressure. And if anyone does feel called to share some of their experiences with this type of thing, I would be really curious to hear like what folks' experiences is with this type of topic. And I really don't think it's very unreasonable to have higher standards for friendships. Like one of the things that really hit me with all of this was many years ago when I started doing this feminine energy work and asking for more out of my relationships and all of that. Oh my God. Hey, Sam, it's been a while. Nice to see you. I love those emojis. So one of the things that really was a paradigm shift for me was doing a lot of this feminine energy stuff. And it really transformed radically how I show up in a love and dating context, like completely. And so if you guys have been here for a while, you'll know I'm vegan and I have nut allergies, and the vegan thing is due to food sensitivities. So it's like pretty intense. Like I always carry around like allergy meds, EpiPens, like all of that stuff. And so if I'm going on a date with someone, I always ask like, hey, would you be able to just contact the restaurant and ask if they're able to accommodate like me being vegan and nut free in the same dishes, like, and all these men that I never had met, like, were completely fine doing that. They're like, absolutely no problem. It'd be my pleasure to go ask and to find out restaurants that we can eat at where you can have something and whatever. And so as I started having these experiences with all these really lovely gentlemen who were joyfully like doing this research to figure out where I could eat and reaching out to the restaurants and all of that, it made me realize that my friends at the time, like, were not doing the same thing. And that the friend that I was talking about that I broke up with a few years ago, whenever she would recommend somewhere that we go to eat, it would always be somewhere that like nothing I could eat was on the menu. And I was kind of like, what the hell, man? And so then I would have to do all that legwork myself, or like suggest somewhere. And it kind of made me realize like, okay, why is my supposed best friend like not willing to find places that will accommodate my allergies when like random ass men that I've literally met on the internet or in person on the street for 5 seconds are more than willing to do that for me? I was kind of like, hold on, something does not compute here. And it was through that feminine energy shift with dating and getting better treatment, being like asking for better treatment, getting it, expecting it, having it happen, that really made me realize, okay, hold on, I need to do this overhaul of my friendships as well. Because why are these random guys treating me so much better than like my friends? I was kind of like, hold the fuck on. And so when we have these realizations in one area of our life, it can ripple out to other areas of our life too. And so for me, the overhaul with feminine energy happened first in the romantic area of life. And then that kind of caused me to say, okay, hold on. Like there's some weirdnesses here with my friendships. And it was honestly really like a transformative shift for me. Right. And I think part of that was understanding the neglect psychology that I was experiencing. And then part of that was also the feminine energy piece of being okay expecting more from my female friends, you know? And obviously friendship is really different than dating. Like my philosophy with friendship is very different than my philosophy with dating. But I actually don't think it's very unreasonable to expect your good friends, best friends to, you know, accommodate your allergies. I think that's like actually not that weird at all. And so one thing to think about for anyone who is kind of like reconsidering their friendships right now, and one of the things I notice a lot is people who've had these like historical friendships, people they've known for like 10, 15, 20 years. And sometimes people keep those friends around like just because they've always been there without stopping to think, hold on, is this friendship fulfilling? Do I actually enjoy spending time with this person? Does this person actually want me to win? Does this person support me? Like, what is going on? And it's just kind of interesting to observe that. And hello to folks who are watching. If you've got any thoughts on this topic, feel free to put it in the chat. Feel free to say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I always like to know who's here, who's chilling. And Sam, if you're still here, if you've got any thoughts on this topic, feel free to pop it in the chat as well. And it's just so interesting. I think sometimes when people approach the idea of wanting better friendships, there can be this guilt of like, do I deserve that? Am I asking for too much? Do I want too much? And it's interesting because oftentimes when we flip it around, like, okay, friend A is treating me like blah, blah, blah. If we flip it around and think about ourselves treating someone else that way, and if the reaction is, oh my God, I would never do that to somebody, that's when you know. Because a lot of us will like have these, you know, weird double standards. So to use this example of my ex-best friend never finding restaurants that would accommodate my allergies and like just expecting me to eat like a fucking bread roll at like these lame restaurants. Like if I flip it and think like, hold on, if my best friend was allergic to whatever, like if my best friend was like keto and I don't know, gluten-free or whatever, like I would, and if it was my turn or whatever to figure out where we were going to eat, for sure I would be like, no problem, I got it, I'll call the restaurant, we'll figure it out. Like that, I wouldn't even think twice. Like, of course I would do that. And so whenever we flip it, then we can realize, oh, why is it of course and I'm comfortable with doing that, and then someone else is not doing that for me? Why am I so okay with that? And so if you do notice yourself being neglected in your friendships, or if you're like, hold on, am I asking for too much? Am I being unreasonable? Am I being ungrateful? Just flip it and see, okay, hold on, would I do this thing that this person is doing to me? Would I ever treat someone like that? And I think you'll probably find the answer is in these unfulfilling friendships. The answer is like, oh my God, I would never even dream of treating someone that way, that I'm being treated, but I've normalized that it's okay to treat me that way, even though I would never treat anyone else that way. And so it's a really, I think, useful tool to do that flipping exercise. It can be a really good way to just like do the gut check of like, okay, hold on, what's really going on here? And I just find it interesting. Let me know if anyone has any thoughts, feelings. My hair is like so crazy today. I think I slept on it like a little bit strangely. So it's kind of everywhere. But it's interesting. I think sisterhood and female friendships are like definitely their own thing. And psychologically, apparently men and women are actually equally aggressive. But men, it's like physically aggressive. And then with women, it's like covert aggression. So it's like gossip, reputational demolishment, sneaky, weird, backhanded stuff. It's interesting. It's pretty interesting stuff. And so back to the topic of frenemies. So I think that if you do have any frenemies, you should just dump them. Because why do you want these people around? You know, just because you've known them forever, that's not a good enough reason to keep someone around. You know, if there's someone who's always sabotaging you, who is making comments, who is not happy for you, who is not encouraging of you, that's something to take note of. And one of my biggest like red flags when I really started to notice something was wrong with that old friend was, as you guys know, last year I was spending the entire year painting my new book, which is out this summer. And that's my PhD project. And she did not once like ask me how it was going. And I eventually realized, hold on, this is kind of strange. Like, why is everyone else that like I barely know like asking me how my fucking book is going? And why is this supposed really good friend not asking me how this book is going? And I think it is so important to have these comparisons. Not that everyone needs to be the same, not that all relationships have to be the same, that's not what I'm saying. But it's more like, okay, how can we better attune to notice like when we are being neglected and when we are normalizing our own neglect in order to avoid being alone, or in order to avoid confrontation, in order to avoid an unpleasant conversation, in order to avoid standing up for ourselves, and just like calling it out, being like, hey, why you don't give a shit about my book? What the fuck? This is really important to me. So, so it's something that I think is so important to be aware of. And again, no one's perfect. We're all going through shit. There's going to be times when our friends can't be there for us. And I think that's totally normal. There's times where I'm going through something, I can't really be there for other people. I think that's part of life. That's just kind of how it is. And I do think we have to have grace and acceptance for that type of thing. But there was another friend breakup I had a few years ago. And one of the red flags with that friendship was, as you guys know, I had a surgery a few years ago, and it was like a 3 to 4 month recovery, like 8-hour surgery. I had to stay overnight at the place. And this friend like did not reach out to see how I was. And it's just supposedly one of my best friends. And that really kind of made me see the friendship really differently. And was a little bit of like, okay, I need to pay a little bit closer attention to like, what is this connection to me? Like, why am I excusing this behavior? Like, it really did not feel good to me to not have, a supposedly really good friend be like, hey, you just had like a 8-hour surgery. How you doing? And so what I really want to just like keep emphasizing here with this topic is sometimes frenemies are loud, like the disrespect is loud, and sometimes the disrespect is quiet. And sometimes that disrespect comes as absence, neglect, undermining, not passing your name along or recommending you in situations where it would make sense to do so, not sharing your name when opportunities come up, all of that type of stuff. Like, I think sometimes our friends, frenemies, can really sabotage us through undermining us, but they want that proximity, either for clout, which I think has happened to me a few times. I've become like a little bit more aware of that now. Sometimes it's because they want clout. Sometimes it's because they want like proximity. Sometimes it's because they want to know like our secrets or how we work. There's so many different reasons, I think, for these people to behave in this way. And so what I really want to share is like, your time is precious. Your energy is precious. Your presence is precious. And it's a gift. And I do think that a lot of us really need to be a lot more choosy and discerning about who are we sharing space with? Who are we giving our time to? Because our time is one thing, we will never get that back. And I'm not saying that everything is a waste of time. Like, I think if we learn something from the experience, then that's amazing. And I think everything is a lesson if we allow it to be. We can learn something from every experience we have if we spend enough time with it and really reflect. And so I'm grateful for all these experiences because it means I can now talk about them to you. And it's really taught me a lot about myself and how I function. Oh my God, sorry, someone is like texting me. We can ignore that. And I think a lot of people give their time away so willy-nilly. So like, whatever, like it's not as precious as it is. And who we give our time to, who we give our energy to, who we are sharing an energetic exchange with is really going to shape so much about us, our mindset, our ability to achieve the life that we want, where our energy goes. Like if someone is just like an energy vampire and they just take and take and take and take and are always bitching and moaning and complaining, rather than providing like positivity and good energy and encouragement and elevation, which is what I personally would want out of friendships. Like, it's something to notice. right? Which isn't to say that all friendships are always going to be this like exact equal 50-50. No, it's always going to be a little bit here, a little bit there. We're all going to be going through parts where we need assistance and parts where we're willing to give at like different rates. And I think that's normal. And so look at the whole entire picture, right? Like, does the friendship make you feel more abundant, more capable, more like you can conquer the world and achieve your dreams and do what you want, and that you're worthy of all these wonderful things? Or does the friendship make you feel depleted, unappreciated, weird, wrong, unimportant, silly, all of these things? Like, do you feel foolish for having dreams when you're around this person? And I think a lot of people really love being miserable, and there can be this like crabs in the bucket mentality where, especially among friendship groups with women, because a lot of women friendship groups, again, are based on sameness. There's psychological research behind this. Really interesting book that gets into this. I think it's called Women's Inhumanity to Women. Very interesting book. It's like this big, fascinating. And it's specifically about this like lack of cohesion and aggression from women towards other women. It's a really fascinating read. And I do think it's relevant here, because I feel like men don't have frenemies in the same way that women do. And I think the exception to this would be men who have like more feminine energy. That could be like a lot of gay men have like a very feminine energy is one thing I would say is probably true. And so I don't really know like what those friendships clashes are like. I don't know, can't speak to that. But I do notice it specifically with women, like where it is so common to have these kind of like weird frenemy relationships. And it is really telling when one person starts to differentiate, starts to succeed, starts to have higher standards, whatever. How do other people react to that? Do they support her and elevate and all of that? Or is there this kind of like poking holes in the balloon and trying to like take joy in the downfall? And it can be so insidious, it can be so sneaky, like it can be kind of hard to notice. But I do think it's something that's important to kind of be on the lookout for. And I think it is better to be temporarily alone than to spend time with toxic friend groups. You know, friend groups that are, you know, like if you differentiate, if you achieve, if you want more, if you're just a little bit unique, which I think all of us are unique, you get mistreated or you get some kind of weirdness. Like, I just don't love that. And I do believe, again, in this abundance mindset of there are going to be better fits out there. Like, the more we elevate, the more we heal, the more we're going to vibrate towards other people that are in that process of healing and reclamation and like reprogramming, which obviously is never over. We're always going to be kind of in this cyclical process of learning and unlearning and growing. However, it is true that sometimes when we are on a self-growth, spiritual level up, healing journey, whether that's around just spirituality in general, whether that's around trauma, whether that is around like childhood stuff and just reprogramming that, whether it's around stepping into our authenticity, we are going to change. And the level that we vibrate at is going to change. And then the people that are better fit for us, that's also going to change. And so one of the things I've noticed is as I've kind of constantly evolved and grown and leveled up and just relearned all these random shit that's going on with my brain, like, oh, why was I attracted to neglectful friendships in my early 20s? Okay, I healed that shit for the most part. Okay, it makes sense that those are going to be going by the wayside and the standards are going to be different as we move on and heal. And healthy people tend to be attracted to healthy people, and people with a more unhealed vibration. And this sounds really hippie and judgmental. Let me explain what I mean. But people who are operating in this kind of like toxic, dysfunctional level with their relationships, that is going to vibrate at a level that attracts similar. And I've been there, so I'm not judging it. Like, I have been in those dysfunctional connections before, like in all these different areas. So again, I'm not judging it. It's more just a description and an observation, something that a lot of us get into without meaning to often, but that's how we know how to be, because that's what we learned when we were kids. Usually that's usually where all this shit starts, right? And so of course we're gonna be these mirrors, these echoes of how we were when we were younger. Obviously that's what we learn, but we don't know we're learning it because we're kids. We just think that's how it is, but it's not neutral. It's all very specific, right? It's all a perspective, right? And so when we learn these perspectives and narratives in the family, we tend to just mimic them as we age. And some people never heal this stuff, I think that's really interesting. Like I've met people like in their 50s, 60s who were still so easily triggered by whatever it happened to be. And I do think it's so important as we age to kind of heal those triggers, become aware, like what is it that sets us off? What is it that upsets us? And what are we going to do about that? Are we going to have a nice chat? Are we going to step away? What are we going to do? How are we going to like work with that trigger? And I think sometimes people get addicted to the trigger. Like they get addicted to like the high emotion, the passion, the elevation of emotion, the activation, right? And then they think that's normal, that intermittent like lack of satisfaction, the high highs, the low lows with these friendships. And we see that with a lot of female friendships where there's like the big dramatic fight and then everyone kisses and makes up and it's all good, happy. And it's just really toxic, these cycles of like extreme ups and downs. And so if you are someone who finds yourself kind of like wrapped up in these waves of like these ups and downs, these extremes in your friendships, like honestly, take a step back and notice like, what is that doing to your nervous system? To be around that all the time. And just because you love someone or care about someone, it doesn't mean that you have to participate in that dysfunction. You can actually love someone and just let them be and let them go and be like, you know what, I love you, but we can't be in connection because this does not resonate anymore. And there's a lot of people that I might love and appreciate, but as I make better choices to, let's say, step away from dysfunction, it does mean sometimes saying no, because many times people can't rise with us and they're on their own journey and they are in their own process with their own healing and all of that, right? And as I've kind of evolved on this process, it has been really amazing to naturally gravitate to other people who have also done this internal work, and just don't create drama because our brains like don't force us to, if that makes sense. It's actually been fucking great. And to realize that there are folks who are just positive, optimistic, encouraging, that's just how they are. You don't have to convince them to be that way. It's like so good. And so, yeah, if you are in like frenemy situations, like get out of it, my friend, please, please. And it can be so hard to let some of these connections go. But a lot of these people are thriving off of mistreating you or denigrating you. And our friends should be our biggest fans and supporters. Yeah, they might have constructive criticism. They might see us at our worst, and that's totally cool. But our friends should not be denigrating us. Our friends should not be discouraging us. Our friends should not be like making us feel like we suck. You know what I mean? And I just do see that so often, especially among female friend groups, where it can get so toxic. And like frenemy shouldn't even be a word. Like I hate that it's a word, like it's just so lame. And what I really want to challenge anyone who is going through this to think about is, why not operate from a space of abundance and decide that there's another life that's possible where friends are supportive and lovely and kind. That exists. There are people out there who are like that. And why not spend more time with those people? And it is true, like I'm 35, like making new friends in your 30s is tough. Like I work for myself. I have no coworkers. I'm chilling at home most of the time. I'm doing work from home. And so it's true that when you're in your 30s, like people are married, people have kids. Everyone's so busy. People have work, and if you don't make friends at work, it can be really tough to like make new friends once you're not a university student anymore, right? Because you're not in that constant proximity with the same people all the time that leads to easy friendships being created, right? And so as we get older, it's true, it's harder to make friends, and it takes effort. It takes time. You got to put in the time, put in the energy to solidify new friendships and explore new friendships. And I think a lot of the time people want to just keep these older shitty friendships that we made when our brains were more unhealthy and dysfunctional and just like did not react to being mistreated and toxicity and all of that. It is easier to keep these friendships around because it's hard to make new friends. It's true. And so I think a lot of people choose that easy path that is easy in the short term, but harder in the long term, because then you're letting these people like energy vampire you and just like ruin your day all the time. And you're going to resent them. It's going to be dramatic. Like the amount of stories I've heard from women about their whack friends, I'm just like, what are we doing here? This is so wild to me because I could never. Now, I could never. Maybe in the past, I could have got sucked into that, but now I just honestly don't think so. And so, as with many things, like the harder it is now to put in that work, whether it's building a business, whether it is saving, whether it is going to the gym, like it's hard now, whether it is putting in that effort to reach out to the new friends and invite them out and make that effort. It's going to be hard now, but it's going to be easier later because we put that work in now. And then, okay, over time, we're going to have that result. We're going to have built a business. We're going to be more fit at the gym, and we're going to have like a new friend. And so I think a lot of people want that instant gratification. They want the result now. And a lot of good things don't involve results now. It involves work, it involves time, it involves intention, it involves effort. It involves also us being our best self and operating from that space. Because if we want good friends that are loving and kind and encouraging, you also have to be that person. You know, if your new friend is starting a new venture, encourage them, you know, move with positivity. Like one of the things I always ask people whenever I'm hanging out with them as a friend or a date or whatever is like, what are you excited about in your life? Like, what are you looking forward to right now? Like, what are you most stoked about with your career? What are you most excited about with blah, 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 whatever thing it is? Like, what are your goals right now? What are you excited about? Rather than spending time bitching and moaning and complaining. Because bitching and moaning and complaining, it's a fast track to intimacy. Like a lot of people, you know, do that. It's like, it's not trauma bonding. People call that trauma bonding. It's like not quite exactly what trauma bonding is. It's another topic. I'll leave that for later. But it is true that complaining creates these kind of like, it feels like a close bond and like you're instantly like fast friends over bitching about whatever. But that is not real intimacy. Like that is not a real like emotionally deep connection. It's superficial and it's based on bullshit. So if you notice yourself commiserating with people and finding kinship through bitching, like I would really reconsider whether that is the type of energy that you want to entertain. And so when I did have a friend who was really negative and would bitch about all this stuff and like what she was bitching about, like I agreed. But what I realized was like, she only reaches out to bitch. Like she can't bond with me over anything positive. She can't bond with me over goals. She can't bond with me over creation and positivity and optimism and dreams. She can only bond with me over being miserable and complaining. And I realized like, I'm not here for that type of friendship. I'm just not. And that's something to really think about too, like whether it's with your friends now or whether you are exploring new friendships, like what you bond over, what you connect over is really important. I'm not saying we need to be 100% happy all the time. Nobody is. That's normal. Feel your feelings. We're all a kind of, you know, plethora of feelings. We're all going to be this gradient of different feelings. However, we can choose what we spend time talking about. We can choose what we spend time bonding over. And so if we're bonding over misery, like maybe try to cut that down, because we can get addicted to complaining. We can get addicted to misery. And if all you do with your friends is bitch about stuff, like what value is that really adding to your life? Like, yeah, so someone agrees with you that like blah, blah, blah thing is stupid. Who cares? How does that make anyone's life better? Is that really enriching? In my mind, no. Do what you want. Do your thing. Like, YOLO, it's your life. It's your life. We can all make our own choices. But I know for me, that doesn't feel good in my body. Like it feels like a waste of time. And it just feels kind of icky. Like, why am I focusing on this? You know what I mean? Like one example of this, I went out with someone a few months ago and we were stuck in traffic. It was just like complete like gridlock traffic. Like we were not moving for like 30 minutes. And he was just like bitching and moaning and complaining. And I was like, you know what? Let's turn on the radio. Like, let's sing. And that sounds like spiritual bypassing, but it's not. Because let's think about it. What vibration is it to be bitching about something we can't change? Yeah, we're going to be in traffic. It's fine. We got to enjoy the fireworks. It's okay. It's okay. And that was worth it. And now here we are. Can we change this traffic? No. It's like, let's just sing to the radio and change our energy. And that is where I'm at. And like that negativity of that person is a big part of why I'm like, I don't think this is going to work out. It's like, that's not where I want to be. That's maybe where I was 15 years ago, but that's not where I want to put my energy now. I don't want to put my energy towards complaining. but it is an easy way to create fast bonds. Bitching about stuff, complaining about stuff, being negative. It's like a quick glue for people, right? Everyone loves being miserable. Like, what is the phrase? Misery loves company. Everyone loves that. It's fast intimacy, right? But it's not sustainable intimacy. And it's kind of like a fake, superficial form of intimacy, right? Actual, like, deeper intimacy is based on positivity, goals, dreams, shared values, right? Like, what shared value does being annoyed with like gridiron traffic betray? Like, what value is that? Where's the depth? It is nowhere, right? But if we're bonding over dreams, goals, whatever, that's going to be values like love, connection, being of service through our work, that type of thing, like creating something, like being the change that we want to be. It's so much better to bond over that than negativity and toxicity and just complaining. That's my opinion anyway. Now I'm going to take a sip of water. And so it's going to be really tempting to just make new friendships based on complaining because it's easy. Who's going to disagree that traffic sucks? No one's going to disagree with that. But is that really where we want to be bonding with people? Like, in my mind, no. Right? And I do find people who tend to like put their focus and attention on what's not working rather than what is working. They're going to do that to you too, And I find if you do want to have a life that is more positive and creative and optimistic and growth oriented rather than fixed mindset, negativity oriented, like, it's going to require of you that you're also operating in that way. And so then we can all elevate together. And it also means that we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt. Like, for instance, like if any of my friends has to reschedule, even if it's last minute, I'm like, great, no problem. Like, I'm never going to be like, oh my God, so-and-so always cancels. They're such a flake, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to assume good intention. I'm going to assume they had a good reason. And I'm going to look on the bright side. You know what? I've been going out too much lately anyway. I need a night to myself. Do what you need to do. It's all good. And when we're operating from that space, it's like we're respecting someone else's sovereignty, respecting our own sovereignty. Everyone's making the right decision that's best for them and honoring their own capacity, which I think is so important, rather than this like weird, resentful thing that I often see in these like friendship clashes. It's like very interesting. And so I don't know if anyone watching live has any thoughts, feelings, questions, situations about this. And if you're finding this conversation interesting, please do throw a little like up there and give me a little subscribe if you haven't. I always feel so awkward saying that. Such an Instagram person. So now I'm trying to be a YouTube person. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm still getting used to it. But friendship is so important. And there is a lot of research about blue zones. And if you guys don't know what that is, blue zones are areas where people live much longer than everyone else. They live to be like over 100. So I think blue zones are like the largest number of centenarians in a single place. And there's someone who's done all this research on blue zones and like, what is going on here? Like, what is contributing to the longevity of these people? And there's going to be a lot of things, like they walk, like they live in like hilly areas. So it keeps them fit because they're always walking on all these like steep hills. There's going to be like more of a plant-based diet. That's also up there. But another one is like social connections, and they have friendships, and they have these friend groups, these community groups. And so our friendships are actually so important, and our friendships can contribute to a longer, healthier, happier life. But in order for that to be true, the friendships actually have to be healthy and good friends. Because if our friends are all like negative and crap, is that going to contribute well to our longevity and mental health and happiness? Like, no, it will not. So frenemies will like diminish your health. Frenemies are bad for your health. Okay. So we want to get rid of them now when we're younger. I'm sure most people watching this are either like my age or a little bit younger, a little bit older. But at any age, it is so important to just do this audit and be like, hold on, is there anywhere that I am holding on to these historical friendships that don't really suit who I am now and where I want to go? And sometimes they can't come with us for that journey. They're just not ready. They're on a different path, and that's okay. And that's not our responsibility to help someone else elevate. that's on them. And trust me, I've tried to do it so many times, but you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. The same is true for people. And some people are just happy vibrating at that different level, where they love the drama. They love the toxic. It gives them that dopamine hit, all of that. So it's an interesting topic. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? I've been babbling for almost an hour. Thank you so much for spending some of your Sunday with me on this very random topic. But it's on my mind lately, because I've just heard so many interesting dramatic stories lately from women about their weird frenemies. And listening to it, I'm always just like, what is going on? Why are we okay with this? I don't get it. By I don't get it, I mean, of course I get it. There's the psychological reasons for that. And I think it's so powerful to realize, okay, this is not working. I need to make a different decision. I need to make a different choice. And that action, that choice can be really hard. But making choices gets us different results. And making choices is a big part of what magic is about, right? Acting in accordance with our intention. And if our intention is to have a happy, healthy life, having frenemies does not align with that intention. It's completely counterproductive to that intention, right? And so when we say we have an intention of having a happy, healthy, positive life that is based on growth and elevation and healing and all of this, and yet we are okay with having frenemies, the universe is like, hold on, what are we talking about here? Is that really your intention then? Because you're not acting as though it is. So I think that's just a really important thing. And I know a lot of you here are going to be interested in magic and witchcraft and all of that. And so a big part of magic and witchcraft is acting in accordance with our intention. Right? I tell people this all the time. If you're going to be doing a spell for a new job, you can't just do the spell. You have to actually send out job applications. And so saying that you want a happy, healthy life as your intention, a joyful life, a life of community and friendship, and yet you keep frenemies around, you are not acting in accordance with your intention, right? You're sabotaging yourself actively. And it might make us feel like a bitch or mean or whatever to say no to frenemies, but really, I think it just means that we've got self-love, self-care, self-worth, all of that, and that we're willing to break our old bad patterns and our old bad habits. And all of us are going to have those at some point, right? It's important. All right, friends, do we have any thoughts, feelings, situations about this topic? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Frenemies. I hate that it's a word. I hate that it's such a common phenomenon that we have a niche word to describe that. That sucks, So lame. But I would also say frenemies are optional. You don't have to engage. You don't have to do that. You can be turned off by frenemies. You can train your brain to be turned off by frenemies rather than to think, okay, they don't value me. How can I convince them? How can I persuade them to treat me better? When people don't treat us well, we can just be like, all right, I'm opting out of this situation. I'm turned off by that, rather than how can I convince them? How can I persuade them to be nicer? It's a choice. Okay, friends, my voice is getting tired, so I might call it there. Thank you so much for listening to my little Sunday service, aka Witch Church, aka Spiritual Sundays, about frenemies and why we should get rid of them, why we should just opt out of that paradigm and stop normalizing wacky friendships. Just no, we don't need to do that. And as you guys know, I'm so interested in witchcraft and magic and spirituality. Yes, but I'm also interested in healing, having a good, happy life, and just being on the fucking wavelength of good vibes. And again, this is not about spiritual bypassing. What it is about is learning to be attracted to positivity and being treated in a healthy, kind way, and being unattracted to toxicity and unattracted to just weird, abusive people. Rather than being like, oh, they're abusive and weird. How can I convince them to not be? We need to break that habit, a lot of us. And so that is going to be relevant to have a good, happy, healthy life. And interestingly, when we start to unlearn these patterns in our brain, witchcraft becomes a lot easier to do. It's more effective because we're not this roadblock in our own way, right? So it is related, my friends. So obviously this is all related to feminine energy and all of this. And I am starting a feminine energy boot camp this coming Friday for the Lionsgate portal. So if you are interested in that, The URL is sabrinamscott.com/bootcamp. It's also in the work with me section. And I've got group options and also one-on-one available for the Feminine Energy Bootcamp if that is something of interest to you. And I'm also doing for this entire month a special. So if you've never had a tarot reading with me before, I will give you a 33% off for your first ever reading with me, hour-long reading for the price of basically a 30-minute reading. First-time clients only, because I know that first tarot reading is sometimes very nerve-wracking. You don't know what to expect. You don't know how good the reader is. You're like, oh my God, but can I trust this person? So let me make that experience a little bit easier. So if that is something you want to take advantage of, please just let me know. I'm happy to help you out with that and get you booked in. And I'll see you guys next week for Sunday service, whatever number it is. And a few days ago, I actually did tarot for the month of August. So we are in August now, hooray. And the cards are pretty interesting. So just go check over to the live section of this YouTube and it will be there. Let me know what you think. And since July just ended, you can also take a look at the tarot for July. And now that July is over, see how did all of those cards pan out for you? It's always interesting to watch these things in hindsight and retrospect as well. I think we can learn a lot that way, doing the end of the month as well as watching the beginning of the month and just kind of seeing, okay, how does the energy shift? How did I make use of that energy? How did those cards and those energies manifest for me that month? Always interesting thing to do. And of course, you can catch me over on YouTube, Instagram, Sabrina M. Scott over on Instagram. And what else? I think that's pretty much it for now. All right, y'all, that's all. Happy Sunday. Thanks for being here. Love you guys. And hit the like button if you haven't, and give me a little subscribe if you haven't. And let me know how I can be of service. I really want to help people on their journey, whether that is self-love, self-improvement, leveling up, witchcraft, magic, spirituality, tarot, whatever it is you want to be learning. I got your back. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Take care. Bye.